What if everything you thought you knew about Game of Thrones was a lie? What if Jon Snow isn't really Ned Stark's bastard? What if Tyrion Lannister has dragon blood flowing through his veins? What if the Hound never actually died? Tonight, we're diving deep into the most explosive secrets hidden within George R.R. Martin's masterpiece, secrets that could change everything. These aren't just theories, these are revelations that rewrite the entire story. Some will shock you, others will break your heart. All of them will make you see Westeros in a completely different light. From hidden parentages that shake the very foundations of noble houses to ancient conspiracies that span centuries, we're about to uncover truths that even the most devoted fans might have missed. So settle in, because what you're about to hear will keep your mind racing long after the last word. The Game of Thrones is deeper and more intricate than anyone ever imagined, and tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on its most guarded secrets. Theory 1. R+L=J. The secret that changed everything. Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell, who rose to become king in the north, carries within his veins the most explosive secret in all of Westeros. He is not Ned Stark's bastard son at all, but rather the legitimate heir born from the secret union of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. This truth reshapes the entire foundation of the Game of Thrones, transforming everything we thought we knew about honor, prophecy, and the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. The clues have been there from the very beginning, woven into Ned Stark's every tortured thought and careful word. When Robert Baratheon spoke with venomous hatred of Rhaegar, calling him a rapist and a monster, Ned's silences spoke volumes. His discomfort wasn't born from loyalty to Robert's feelings, but from the terrible knowledge that his best friend's greatest enemy was also the father of the boy he'd raised as his own son. When Ned promised his dying sister Lyanna at the Tower of Joy, surrounded by blue winter roses, her favorite flowers, he swore to protect more than just her memory. He swore to protect her son from a king who would see any Targaryen child dead. The vision Daenerys witnessed in the House of the Undying becomes crystal clear when viewed through this lens. She saw a blue winter rose growing from a chink in a wall of ice, where Jon serves his watch at Castle Black. The symbolism is unmistakable. Lyanna's love flowering in the frozen wasteland, where her son found his purpose, far from the politics and dangers of the South. Even more telling is Melisandre's confession that when she searches her sacred flames for Azor Ahai reborn, she sees only snow. Not Stannis Baratheon, her chosen champion. Not Daenerys Targaryen, the mother of dragons. But snow, always snow. Jon's true parentage transforms him from a bastard seeking acceptance into the living embodiment of the series' central conflict. He is quite literally the Song of Ice and Fire. Ice flowing through his Stark blood, connecting him to the ancient magic of the North, the old gods, and the mystical powers that run beneath Winterfell's foundations. Fire burns in his Targaryen heritage, linking him to dragons, prophecy, and the divine right of kings that once conquered the Seven Kingdoms. If Rhaegar and Lyanna were secretly married, as growing evidence suggests they were, then Jon possesses not just a claim to the Iron Throne, but the strongest claim in Westeros. He would supersede even Daenerys, making their eventual meeting not just a collision of ice and fire, but a confrontation between the true heir and the claimant who believes herself rightful. But Rhaegar's motivations ran deeper than mere passion or political alliance. The melancholy prince was obsessed with prophecy, convinced that his bloodline would produce the prince that was promised, the hero destined to save the world from a coming darkness. When his wife, Elia Martell, could bear no more children after Prince Aegon, Rhaegar's desperation led him to seek another path to fulfill prophecy. Lyanna Stark represented the missing element in his calculations, the ice to temper his fire, the winter wolf to balance the dragon's flame. Their union wasn't just love story, it was prophecy made flesh, a deliberate attempt to create the savior the world would need. Ned Stark carried this crushing secret for 16 years, watching Robert Baratheon foam with rage at every mention of Targaryens, while knowing that his best friend's greatest enemy's son sat at his own table every night. Every time Robert spoke of crushing dragon eggs beneath his warhammer, every toast to the downfall of the Dragon Dynasty, Ned's heart must have clenched, knowing that the last dragon egg sat before him disguised as his bastard son. The promise Ned made to Lyanna extended beyond mere protection. He swore to guard Jon's true identity until the realm was ready, until the time came when the world would need a true king who understood both honor and sacrifice. Theory 2. A plus Jate. The Imps. Hidden dragon blood Tyrion Lannister, the despised dwarf son who killed his mother in birth and earned his father's eternal hatred, carries an even more shocking secret than his deformity. The imp of Casterly Rock is not Tywin's son at all, but the bastard offspring of Mad King Aerys II Targaryen and Joanna Lannister. This hidden truth explains not only Tywin's pathological hatred for his youngest child, but also Tyrion's lifelong obsession with dragons and his uncanny ability to inspire loyalty despite society's prejudices. The evidence begins with a devastating historical truth that haunted the Lannister family for decades. King Aerys II Targaryen harbored an obsessive, inappropriate lust for Joanna Lannister that tormented both her husband Tywin and Queen Rhaella for years. Court records document that during Joanna and Tywin's wedding ceremony, the king took such liberties during the traditional bedding that Tywin's famous composure cracked completely. Witnesses described the future hand of the king as barely containing murderous rage, a reaction that would define his relationship with Aerys for the rest of their lives. But this humiliation was only the beginning of Aerys's obsession. Joanna served as one of Queen Rhaella's ladies-in-waiting at court, placing her directly in the king's path during his increasingly manic and lustful phases. Court whispers spoke constantly of Aerys's inappropriate attention toward Lord Tywin's beautiful wife, attention that grew so blatant and persistent that Queen Rhaella, in a rare moment of assertiveness, dismissed Joanna from her service to protect both women from the king's escalating advances. The crucial timeline centers around a grand tournament celebrating the 10th anniversary of Aerys's reign, an event where Joanna was notably present. At court, despite her earlier dismissal, historical records place her in King's Landing during precisely the period when Tyrion would have been conceived. 9 months later, Joanna died, giving birth to a child that horrified even the experienced midwives. Witnesses described the infant as grotesquely deformed, possibly bearing a tail and other disturbing features that eerily mirror the historical descriptions of malformed Targaryen stillbirths that plagued the dynasty for generations. Tywin Lannister's pathological hatred for Tyrion transcends any normal disappointment in a disabled child. This is a man who built his entire identity around family legacy, power, and the unassailable strength of House Lannister. The idea that his wife bore another man's child, especially the child of the king, who constantly humiliated and undermined him, would represent the ultimate, unforgivable betrayal of everything he held sacred. Every cruel punishment, every public humiliation, every moment of withheld affection becomes recontextualized as revenge against the living reminder of his greatest shame. Tywin's final words to Tyrion carry devastating weight when viewed through this lens. "You are no son of mine" weren't the angry words of a dying man disowning a disappointing heir. They were a literal deathbed confession. Tywin knew, he had always known, The secret had eaten at him for decades, transforming natural paternal love into bitter hatred for the bastard who bore his name, but not his blood. Tyrion's physical characteristics subtly betray his true parentage to those who know what to look for. His hair, while appearing golden in certain light, often looks almost white blonde, particularly pale even for a Lannister, lacking the true golden richness that crowns Jaime and Cersei. More tellingly, his eyes are mismatched. One green-like, a true Lannister, one black like the dark purple eyes that sometimes manifest in Targaryen bloodlines when the dragon blood runs strong. The most compelling evidence, however, lies in Tyrion's lifelong obsession with dragons. From his earliest memories, he dreamed of the great beasts with an intensity that puzzled everyone around him. While other children played with wooden swords or dolls, Tyrion studied dragon lore with scholarly devotion, memorizing every detail of their anatomy, behavior, and history. He felt an inexplicable kinship with creatures that had been dead for over a century, as if some part of his soul remembered what it meant to be bonded with a dragon. When he finally encountered Daenerys's living dragons in Meereen, they responded to him with curiosity rather than the aggression they showed most strangers. Viserion and Rhaegal allowed him to approach and even remove their chains, a remarkable reaction from creatures notorious for roasting anyone who presumed too much familiarity. The dragons sensed something in Tyrion that human eyes couldn't perceive, the blood of their ancient masters flowing through his veins. Theory 3. The Gravedigger, the Hound's quiet redemption. Sandor Clegane, the scarred and cynical warrior known throughout Westeros as the Hound, did not die from the festering wounds that Arya Stark left him with after their brutal encounter. Instead, he found his way to the Quiet Isle, a sanctuary for broken men seeking redemption, where he now lives as a humble gravedigger. Here, surrounded by silence and honest labor, he seeks peace from a lifetime of violence, pain, and the trauma that shaped him into one of the most feared fighters in the Seven Kingdoms. When Brienne of Tarth arrived at the Quiet Isle during her desperate search for the Stark daughters, she encountered more than just a community of silent, penitent brothers. The elder brother who welcomed her spoke with the wisdom of a man who had experienced his own death and rebirth, not literal death, but the profound spiritual transformation that comes when a man's old self dies completely, allowing something new and better to emerge from the ashes of his former life. The elder brother's careful words about Sandor Clegane carry deeper meaning than their surface suggests. When he tells Brienne that the Hound is dead and that he personally buried Sandor Clegane, he speaks a truth that transcends the merely physical. The violent, bitter, hate-filled persona that the world knew as the Hound has indeed died on that hill where Arya left him. What remains is simply Sandor, a broken man seeking to rebuild his soul through honest labor, quiet contemplation, and the healing power of a community that asks no questions about past sins. The evidence for Sandor's survival lies in the details that Brienne observes during her stay among the brothers. Working quietly among the novices, she notices a man of extraordinary size, taller even than herself, and few people in Westeros match Brienne's impressive height. This giant moves with a pronounced limp, dragging one leg in a manner entirely consistent with the grievous wound that was festering when Arya abandoned Sandor to what seemed like certain death. Most revealing is the moment when a dog approaches this massive gravedigger during his labors. Dogs, with their instinctive understanding of human nature, can sense things about people that escape human perception entirely. This dog shows no fear of the towering figure, and the man, despite his intimidating size and the manual labor that has hardened his already formidable frame, gently scratches behind the animal's ears with a tenderness that speaks to something fundamental in his character that decades of violence and cynicism never quite managed to destroy. The most compelling evidence, however, lies not with Sandor himself, but with his legendary warhorse, Stranger. This massive, aggressive destrier was famous throughout the realm for being utterly unmanageable by anyone except Sandor. The horse's fierce loyalty and violent temperament made it impossible for others to ride or even handle safely, yet Stranger resides peacefully in the Quiet Isle stables, a clear indication that his master lives nearby. The bond between warrior and warhorse in the medieval world was sacred and unbreakable. Stranger's presence on this isolated island cannot be explained by chance or convenience, but only by the fact that Sandor himself brought the animal to this sanctuary, or that the horse followed his master's scent to this place of healing. The symbolism of Sandor's apparent redemption runs deeper than personal transformation. His entire life was defined by fire, the traumatic burns inflicted by his brother Gregor during childhood, the terror and uncontrollable rage that fire always triggered within him, and the violence that burned through every aspect of his existence like wildfire consuming a forest. The Quiet Isle represents the perfect antithesis to everything that tormented him throughout his life. Here, surrounded by water and dedicated to peaceful contemplation, Sandor has found an environment where fire cannot reach him, where the flames that haunted his nightmares hold no power. The brother's vow of silence means he need never again hear the cruel words that followed him throughout his life. No more mockery about his scars, no more orders to kill, no more of the casual cruelty that taught him the world had no place for gentleness. The honest labor of digging graves allows him to process his own symbolic death and rebirth with each hole he digs, preparing final rest for others while finding peace for himself. Theory 4. Lyanna Stark as the Knight of the Laughing Tree. Lyanna Stark, the spirited and rebellious sister of Eddard Stark, was the mysterious Knight of the Laughing Tree who appeared at the fateful tourney at Harrenhal. In this disguise, she defended the honor of Howland Reed and inadvertently set in motion the chain of events that would culminate in Robert's rebellion, the fall of the Targaryen dynasty, and her own tragic death in the Tower of Joy. The Great Tourney at Harrenhal was meant to be a celebration of chivalry and pageantry, but it became the stage for a romance that would reshape the Seven Kingdoms. When Mira Reed told Bran Stark the story of the Crannogman and the Mystery Knight, she was recounting more than just a tale of adventure. She was describing the moment when Lyanna Stark's fierce sense of justice collided with Prince Rhaegar, Targaryen's growing obsession with prophecy, creating a spark that would ignite a war. The Mystery Knight appeared as if from a fever dream, short of stature and clad in ill-fitting, mismatched armor that seemed hastily assembled from whatever pieces could be found. The knight's shield bore the image of a laughing weirwood tree, its carved face seeming to mock the very notion of southern chivalry. This unexpected champion emerged specifically to defend Howland Reed, the Crannogman who had been bullied and assaulted by 3 squires serving knights from prominent houses. But Lyanna Stark had already intervened once that day, fiercely berating those same squires and tending to Howland's injuries with her own hands, demonstrating both her protective nature and her complete disdain for bullies who preyed upon the weak. The clues pointing to Lyanna's identity as the Mystery Knight are woven throughout Mira's careful narrative. The knight's notably short stature fits perfectly with Lyanna's build. She was described as small and slender, quite unlike her tall brothers. The mismatched armor suggests pieces hastily borrowed or assembled, exactly what a young woman would need to do to disguise herself for a joust. Most tellingly, the booming, disguised voice that the knight used speaks to someone actively trying to hide their true identity, particularly someone whose natural voice might give away their gender. Lyanna possessed both the motivation and the skill to carry out such a bold deception. Her renowned wolf blood, the term used to describe the wild, fiery, and independent spirit that ran through certain Starks, combined with her established skill as a horsewoman, made her uniquely capable of conceiving and executing such an unconventional act. She had clear reason to champion Howland Reed, who was not just any victim, but her father's loyal bannerman and a friend to the Stark family. Her sense of justice wouldn't allow such cruelty to go unanswered, even if it meant defying every convention of proper ladylike behavior. The choice of a laughing weirwood tree for her shield's blazon was far from random. It represented a potent and deliberate statement of northern identity, a reaffirmation of her connection to the old gods and the ancient ways in the midst of a tourney dominated by southern chivalric traditions and political maneuvering. The laughing aspect of the weirwood could reflect her own rebellious, spirited nature, or perhaps serve as subtle mockery of the arrogant squires she had bested, or even the rigid social conventions that she consistently chafed against throughout her short life. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen was tasked by his increasingly paranoid father, King Aerys II, to find and unmask this mystery knight who had embarrassed several noble houses and made a mockery of their squires. According to the theory, Rhaegar did discover the knight's identity, and when he found it to be Lyanna Stark, he became completely captivated by her spirit, beauty, and the fierce courage that had driven her to such an audacious act. This encounter was the moment that sparked their fatal attraction, not the traditional narrative of rape and abduction, but a meeting of minds between two young people who understood the weight of prophecy and destiny. His subsequent act of crowning, Lyanna as the Queen of Love and Beauty at the tourney's conclusion, passing over his own wife, Elia Martell, in front of the entire assembled nobility, was both a public declaration of his fascination and a deliberate provocation that shocked the realm. That crown of blue winter roses wasn't just a romantic gesture. It was Rhaegar's way of acknowledging that he had found his ice to balance his fire, the northern wolf that prophecy demanded he unite with to produce the prince that was promised. Theory 5. The Grand Northern Conspiracy, the North remembers. In the aftermath of the Red Wedding's unprecedented treachery, the surviving northern houses have not truly bent the knee to House Bolton as they appear to have done. Instead, they are engaged in an intricate, carefully coordinated conspiracy to overthrow the Bolton regime, exact terrible vengeance for the massacre of their rightful lords, and restore Stark rule to the north. This shadow rebellion operates through coded messages, strategic delays, and carefully orchestrated acts of defiance that appear as mere coincidence to their enemies. The heart of this conspiracy beats strongest in White Harbor, where Lord Wyman Manderley has perfected the art of appearing to be a harmless, gluttonous fool while orchestrating one of the most sophisticated resistance movements in Westerosi history. His famous "The North Remembers" speech to Davos Seaworth revealed the depth of northern fury that simmers beneath the surface of apparent submission. When he spoke those words, he wasn't just expressing sentiment, he was delivering a promise of retribution that would shake the very foundations of the Bolton regime. Manderley's genius lies in his ability to use his enemies' prejudices against them. The Freys and Boltons see him as a fat, weak Southron lord who cares more for his next meal than for northern honor. They believe his apparent loyalty stems from cowardice and his desire to protect his remaining family members. In reality, Manderley has been planning their destruction from the moment news of the Red Wedding reached White Harbor, and every gesture of submission has been carefully calculated to lull his enemies into complacency while he marshals his forces and builds his alliances. The infamous Frey Pies theory suggests that Manderley's revenge has already begun in the most visceral way possible. During Ramsay Bolton's wedding feast, 3 Freys who had disappeared on their way to White Harbor were notably absent from the celebrations. Manderley arrived late to the feast, bringing with him several large meat pies that he insisted were a special delicacy from his kitchens. Throughout the evening, he made a point of requesting that the Freys and Boltons partake of his gift, watching with barely concealed satisfaction as they consumed what may have been the flesh of their own kin. When he loudly proclaimed that he was too fat to eat another bite, it wasn't gluttony speaking. It was the satisfaction of a man who had served justice in its most primal form. But Manderley's plans extend far beyond personal revenge. He has been secretly building a war fleet in White Harbor, constructing ships that could transport northern forces anywhere along the coast or provide crucial naval support for any rebellion against the Crown. His supposed construction delays and cost overruns are actually deliberate stalling tactics, ensuring that the fleet will be completed exactly when it's needed most, not when his enemies expect it. The conspiracy extends throughout the north, with each house playing their assigned role in the grand deception. The Umbers have split their forces in a brilliant strategic maneuver that confuses their enemies while maintaining maximum flexibility. Great John Umber remains a hostage of the Freys, but his sons have divided their loyalties in a way that ensures the family survives regardless of the outcome, while positioning themselves to strike when the moment is right. Other Horsebane Umber ostensibly supports the Boltons, while his uncle Moore's Crowfoot Umber openly opposes them, giving the family representation on both sides of the conflict. Lady Barbary Dustin plays perhaps the most complex role in the conspiracy, her public statements revealing a deep-seated resentment that could be turned toward any number of targets depending on how events unfold. Her hatred of the Starks appears genuine on the surface, but her actions consistently undermine Bolton authority in subtle ways that suggest her true loyalties lie elsewhere. Her intimate knowledge of Winterfell's layout and her ability to move freely throughout the castle make her an invaluable asset for any plan to retake the ancient seat of Stark power. The missing element that could transform this conspiracy from a collection of individual grudges into a unified rebellion is Robbie Stark's will. Before his death, the young wolf legitimized Jon Snow and potentially named him as his heir, recognizing that his half-brother was the only surviving male with Stark blood who could unite the North. This document, currently believed to be in the possession of Mage Mormont and Galbart Glover, could serve as the legal foundation for a new Northern rebellion, providing legitimacy to what might otherwise be dismissed as mere revenge-seeking. The conspiracy's ultimate goal extends beyond simple restoration. It seeks to establish Northern independence once and for all. The Red Wedding proved that Southern oaths mean nothing when they conflict with Southern interests, and the North has learned that lesson well. When the conspiracy finally reveals itself, it won't just be seeking to replace one Southern king with another, but to crown a king in the North who understands that the only way to protect Northern interests is through Northern independence. Theory 6. The Dornish Master Plan. Fire and blood delayed. Prince Doran Martell, the seemingly passive and cautious ruler of Dorne, has spent decades orchestrating one of the most sophisticated long-term strategies in Westerosi political history. Far from being the weak, indecisive leader that his enemies believe him to be, Doran has been patiently weaving a web of alliances, marriages, and strategic positioning that will ultimately place a Martell on the Iron Throne, while simultaneously destroying House Lannister and everything it represents. Doran's master plan began forming the moment he learned of his sister Elya's brutal murder during the sack of King's Landing. While others called for immediate war and bloody vengeance, Doran understood that true justice required patience, careful planning, and the kind of strategic thinking that could dismantle an enemy completely, rather than simply defeating them in battle. His famous words to his daughter Arianne, "Vengeance, justice, fire and blood," weren't just expressions of anger, but a promise of methodical destruction that would unfold over decades. The first phase of his plan involved secret negotiations. with the exiled Targaryens, specifically the arrangement of a marriage pact between Princess Arianne and Prince Viserys Targaryen. This agreement, negotiated through Sir Willem Darry years before Viserys' death, was designed to position Dorne as the primary supporters of Targaryen restoration while ensuring that a Martell would sit beside the new king as queen. When Viserys died, this didn't represent a failure of Doran's planning, but merely required adaptation to changing circumstances. The dispatch of his son Quentyn to seek Daenerys Targaryen's hand in marriage appears on the surface to be a desperate gamble by a father hoping to salvage his decades of planning. In reality, Quentyn's mission served multiple purposes that had little to do with actually securing a marriage alliance. The journey provided Doran with crucial intelligence about Daenerys, her dragons, and the political situation in Essos. It also served as a deliberate misdirection, leading enemies to believe that Dorne's hopes rested on a single, vulnerable mission that could be easily thwarted. More importantly, Quentyn's mission may have been designed to fail from the beginning, serving as a necessary sacrifice to satisfy other conspirators while Doran pursued his true objective through different channels. The books that Doran provided to Arianne during her confinement, A History of Westeros, a copy of the Seven-Pointed Star, a tome on Dornish lore, and a book about dragons, weren't random selections, but carefully chosen texts that reveal the true scope of his ambitions. These books contain the keys to understanding Westerosi succession law, religious legitimacy, and the potential weaknesses of dragon-wielding rivals. Doran's ultimate strategy appears to involve manipulating the very foundations of Westerosi law and custom to create a path to the throne that bypasses traditional conquest entirely. By potentially encouraging Cersei Lannister's efforts to secure Casterly Rock for herself over her brothers, he could be laying the groundwork for the adoption of Dornish primogeniture laws throughout the realm. This would not only legitimize female inheritance, but also strengthen Arianne's eventual claim to power through legal precedent rather than military force. Simultaneously, Doran may be exploiting the rise of the Faith Militant, a movement that gained strength partly due to the chaos and moral outrage generated by his brother Oberyn's actions in King's Landing. The Faith's resurgence creates a powerful tool for undermining both Lannister legitimacy and any potential Targaryen restoration, given the Faith's historical opposition to incestuous marriages. By positioning Arianne as a candidate who can claim descent from a legitimate Targaryen line while avoiding the religious complications that plague other claimants, Doran creates a path to power that his enemies cannot easily counter. The true genius of Doran's plan lies in its patience and adaptability. While his enemies focus on immediate threats and obvious moves, he has been playing a game that spans generations, creating multiple paths to victory while ensuring that each setback only strengthens his ultimate position. His apparent weakness becomes his greatest strength as enemies consistently underestimate both his capabilities and his ambitions until it's far too late to stop him. Prince Oberyn's dramatic confrontation with Sir Gregor Clegane wasn't just a brother seeking justice for his sister's murder. It was a carefully orchestrated piece of Doran's larger strategy. Oberyn's death served to discredit the Lannister regime, highlight their moral failures, and create the kind of outrage that fuels religious and political movements. Even in death, the Red Viper accomplished more toward Doran's goals than he could have achieved through years of conventional warfare. Theory 7. The Southron Ambitions, the conspiracy that started it all. Decades before Robert's rebellion erupted into open warfare, the great houses of Westeros were already positioning themselves for a conflict that would reshape the realm forever. The intricate web of marriages and fosterings that connected House Stark to houses Arryn, Tully and Baratheon wasn't the result of coincidence or simple political opportunism. It was the foundation of a carefully orchestrated conspiracy designed to overthrow the Targaryen dynasty and replace it with a more stable, controllable regime. The architect of this grand conspiracy was Lord Rickard Stark, whose supposed Southron ambitions were actually a sophisticated understanding of how power truly worked in the Seven Kingdoms. Rickard recognized that the Targaryens' grip on power had been fundamentally weakened by the death of their dragons, and that King Aerys II's increasingly erratic behavior provided an opportunity to create a coalition powerful enough to challenge royal authority. Rather than simply rebelling against an unjust king, Rickard envisioned a systematic replacement of the entire Targaryen system with something more predictable and manageable. The key alliances were forged through strategic marriages and fosterings that created bonds stronger than mere political convenience. Brandon Stark's betrothal to Catelyn Tully ensured Riverland's support for any northern initiative, while Eddard Stark's fostering at the Eyrie under Jon Arryn alongside Robert Baratheon created personal friendships that would prove more durable than formal treaties. Lyanna Stark's betrothal to Robert Baratheon was meant to cement the alliance while providing the coalition with a claimant who possessed legitimate Targaryen blood through his grandmother, offering a veneer of continuity that would ease the transition of power. Lord Jon Arryn played a crucial role in this conspiracy, using his position as one of the realm's most respected lords to provide legitimacy and guidance to the younger generation of conspirators. His decision to foster both Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon wasn't random. It was a deliberate attempt to forge the personal bonds that would be necessary to hold the coalition together through the challenges of rebellion and the even greater challenges of ruling afterward. The friendships formed in the Vale would prove to be the emotional foundation upon which the entire rebellion was built. Lord Hoster Tully's involvement demonstrates the conspiracy's reach into the very heart of the realm's political structure. His negotiations with Lord Tywin Lannister regarding a potential marriage between Lysa Tully and Jaime Lannister suggest that even the Lannisters were being courted as potential allies, though Tywin's characteristic caution prevented him from committing until the rebellion's outcome was certain. This patience would ultimately serve him well, allowing him to enter the conflict at the decisive moment while maintaining plausible deniability about his earlier involvement. The conspiracy's timeline was dramatically accelerated by events beyond the conspirators' control. Prince Rhaegar's apparent abduction of Lyanna Stark and King Aerys's savage murder of Lord Rickard and Brandon Stark forced the alliance to move before all their preparations were complete and before all potential allies had been secured. What had been planned as a carefully orchestrated political transition became a desperate war for survival, with Robert Baratheon thrust into the role of rebellion leader largely because he was the most acceptable compromise candidate among the various factions. The shared experiences of the conspirators during the War of the Ninepenny Kings provided the initial foundation for their later alliance. Lords like Jon Arryn, Steffon Baratheon, Tywin Lannister, Hoster Tully, and Rickard Stark fought together in that conflict, forming personal relationships and mutual respect that transcended regional loyalties. More importantly, they witnessed firsthand the consequences of Targaryen decision-making and began to question whether the realm might be better served by different leadership. The ultimate goal of the Southron ambitions extended beyond simply replacing Mad King Aerys with someone more reasonable. The conspirators sought to fundamentally alter the balance of power in Westeros, replacing the unpredictable autocracy of dragon lords with a more collaborative system where the great houses would have genuine influence over royal policy. Robert Baratheon was chosen not just for his Targaryen blood, but because his personality and background suggested he would be amenable to guidance from the lords who had placed him on the throne. The conspiracy's success in achieving regime change was remarkable, but its failure to create lasting stability reveals the limitations of even the most sophisticated political planning. The personal relationships that held the rebellion together proved insufficient to manage the complexities of peacetime governance, and many of the problems that the conspirators sought to solve simply re-emerged in different forms under the new regime. Theory 8. The Night's King of Book Lore, a Stark Betrayal. The legendary Night's King from the ancient stories told by Old Nan represents one of the darkest chapters in Northern history, a tale of forbidden love, corrupted power, and a betrayal that strikes at the very heart of House Stark's honor. This figure, distinct from the television show's Night King, was the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who fell in love with an other-like woman and ruled the Night Fort as his personal kingdom for 13 terrible years, making sacrifices to the others and committing atrocities so horrific that his very name was erased from history. Old Nan's chilling tales, whispered to Bran Stark in the crypts of Winterfell, describe a warrior renowned for his fearlessness, a trait that ultimately became his undoing when he encountered something beyond the wall that should have filled any rational man with terror. The woman he met was described with skin white as the moon and eyes like blue stars, and her flesh was cold as ice to the touch. Despite these clear warnings of her otherworldly nature, he pursued, caught, and loved her with an obsession that consumed his soul along with his seed. The transformation that followed was both gradual and absolute. The Night's King brought his corpse queen back to the Night Fort, the oldest and most dreaded castle on the wall, a fortress already steeped in legends of horror and supernatural dread. There, he declared himself a king and her his queen, using what Old Nan called strange sorcery to bind his Night's Watch brothers to his will. For 13 years they reigned in darkness, committing acts so horrific that even centuries later, the tales are whispered with dread throughout the North. The identity of this fallen Lord Commander remains one of the most contentious mysteries in Northern history. While various tales name him as a Bolton, Umber, Flint, or member of other northern houses, Old Nan's version carries special weight because of her deep connection to Winterfell and its secrets. She adamantly tells Bran that the Night's King was a Stark of Winterfell, possibly even the brother to Brandon the Breaker, the very king in the north who eventually brought down his dark reign. This Stark connection suggests a profound betrayal at the heart of the North's most storied lineage, a shameful secret that the family has spent millennia trying to bury. The revelation that the Night's King might have been Brandon the Breaker's own brother adds layers of tragedy and irony to the tale. Brandon the Breaker, working alongside Joramun the King beyond the Wall, led the coalition that finally ended the Night's King's reign of terror. The idea that Brandon was forced to destroy his own brother, who had fallen to corruption and forbidden love, transforms this from a simple tale of good versus evil into a deeply personal family tragedy that would haunt House Stark for generations. The nature of the Night's King's corpse queen connects this ancient tale to the larger mysteries surrounding the others and their relationship with humanity. Her description perfectly matches that of the others encountered in the series, suggesting that the Night's King's fall represents an early attempt at some form of alliance or pact between humans and the Ice Beings. The sacrifices made to the others during his reign might have been part of a larger agreement or tribute system that has since been forgotten or deliberately obscured. The systematic erasure of all records concerning the Night's King speaks to the horror his reign inspired and the determination of those who defeated him to ensure such corruption could never rise again. His very name was forbidden, his deeds struck from the histories, and his existence reduced to whispered tales told by old women to frighten children. This level of historical censorship suggests that his crimes went beyond simple tyranny into realms that threatened the very foundations of human civilization in the north. The legend might offer crucial insights into the ancient relationship between the first men and the others, suggesting that such relationships existed and that they carried terrible consequences when they crossed certain forbidden lines. The Night King's story could be a cautionary tale about the dangers of treating with the others, or it might represent the remnants of a more complex ancient pact that was catastrophically violated. Wondering 9, Bran's connection to the Night King, the time loop paradox. The Night King of the television series, while distinct from the book's Night's King, may be connected to Bran Stark through a devastating time loop that transforms the Three-Eyed Raven's attempts to prevent catastrophe into the very cause of the disaster he seeks to avoid. This theory suggests that Bran's growing powers and desperate interventions in the past create a paradox where his efforts to save the world directly lead to the creation of its greatest threat. The foundation of this theory lies in the unique connection between Bran and the Night King demonstrated throughout the series. Unlike other characters who encounter the White Walkers, Bran can perceive the Night King within his visions, and more significantly, the Night King can perceive and physically interact with him. This two-way connection is unprecedented and suggests a bond that transcends normal magical interactions, implying either a shared origin or a destiny that binds them together across time and space. The pivotal scene showing the children of the forest creating the first White Walker provides the key to understanding this connection. When Leaf plunges the dragonglass dagger into the heart of a captured first man, Bran experiences what appears to be physical pain and distress, as if he himself were feeling the agony of transformation. This reaction goes beyond mere empathy or magical sensitivity. It suggests that Bran is somehow present within that moment in a way that connects him directly to the Night King's creation. The time loop theory proposes that Bran, in his future role as the Three-Eyed Raven, makes multiple desperate attempts to prevent the Long Night by traveling back through time to intervene at crucial moments. Each intervention, however, creates unintended consequences that ultimately lead to the very disasters he seeks to prevent. His first attempt might involve trying to warn King Aerys II about the coming White Walker invasion, but his whispers from the past only fuel Aerys's paranoia and obsession with wildfire, earning him the name Mad King and setting the stage for Robert's rebellion. A second intervention could see Bran traveling even further back to become Bran the Builder, using his knowledge of future threats to construct the Wall and Winterfell as defensive measures. This version of Bran might establish the Stark words "Winter is coming" as a perpetual warning, and ensure that there must always be a Stark in Winterfell to maintain ancient magical defenses. The similarities in names between Bran Stark and Bran the Builder support this possibility, suggesting a cyclical nature to Stark history that transcends normal generational succession. The final and most desperate intervention involves Bran attempting to prevent the Night King's creation by forging into the human sacrifice at the exact moment of transformation. His plan might be to stop the process from within, using his consciousness to resist the children's magic and prevent the first White Walker from ever existing. Instead, he becomes trapped within the transformed being, his consciousness merged with that of the Night King, but slowly losing its humanity over thousands of years of imprisonment within an ice-cold shell. This theory explains the Night King's apparent strategic intelligence and his specific focus on Bran during their eventual confrontation. If the Night King contains Bran's consciousness, He would possess knowledge of future events, understanding of military strategy, and a desperate need to complete the time loop by ensuring that the present-day Bran eventually travels back to become him. The Night King's patient, methodical approach to conquest reflects Bran's own careful, analytical nature, rather than the mindless hunger typically associated with the undead. The visual and thematic parallels between Bran and the Night King support this connection. Both are associated with ancient magic, both have the ability to control others, Bran through warging, the Night King through his command of the dead, and both represent a transformation from human into something beyond normal, mortal existence. The Night King's creation by the children of the forest mirrors Bran's training by the three-eyed raven, suggesting parallel paths that ultimately converge into a single, tragic destiny. The time loop paradox adds profound emotional weight to the series' conclusion, transforming Bran from a passive observer of history into its most tragic participant. His noble desire to save the world leads directly to his own transformation into its greatest threat, creating a cycle of heroism and horror that can only be broken by accepting the terrible truth of his own destiny. The young boy who dreamed of becoming a knight ultimately becomes something far more significant and infinitely more tragic. A king whose crown comes at the cost of everything he once was. Theory 10. Azor Ahai and the Prince that was promised. The true meaning of prophecy. The ancient prophecies of Azor Ahai reborn and the prince that was promised have guided and misguided characters throughout the series, but their true meaning may be far more complex and metaphorical than anyone realizes. Rather than predicting the rise of a single chosen hero wielding a magical sword, these prophecies might describe the necessary sacrifice and painful choices that must be made to save the world from darkness, with multiple characters fulfilling different aspects of the prophetic requirements. The legend of Azor Ahai tells of a hero who forged the great sword Lightbringer through a series of increasingly difficult trials. First, he tempered the blade in water, but it broke. Then he thrust it through the heart of a lion, but again it shattered. Finally, he drove the sword through the living heart of his beloved wife, Nissa, and her blood, soul, and strength went into the steel, creating a weapon of unparalleled power that could drive back the darkness threatening to engulf the world. This progression from water to lion to beloved suggests that Lightbringer might not be a literal sword at all, but a metaphor for the terrible choices that a true hero must make. The sacrifice of what is most precious, love itself, transforms the hero into something capable of salvation, but at a cost that makes victory bitter rather than sweet. Azor Ahai's triumph comes not from gaining power, but from accepting a loss, so profound that it fundamentally changes the nature of heroism itself. The prince that was promised prophecy, deeply embedded in Targaryen lore and closely connected to Aegon, the Conqueror's vision of a future threat from the north, shares many elements with the Azor Ahai legend while adding specifically Targaryen elements. This prophesied prince is said to be born of the Targaryen line, destined to unite the realm against an existential threat and associated with the return of dragons to the world. The prophecy's gender-neutral language in High Valyrian suggests that the prince could be male or female, opening the field of potential candidates considerably. Daenerys Targaryen fulfills many of the prophecy's requirements through her journey from exiled princess to mother of dragons. Her symbolic rebirth in Khal Drogo's funeral pyre, surrounded by salt from her tears and smoke from the flames, matches the prophetic description perfectly. She awakened dragons from stone eggs that had been dormant for over a century, and her rise coincided with the appearance of the red comet that many interpreted as the bleeding star foretold in prophecy. Her dragons themselves might represent the true Lightbringer, weapons of fire and magic capable of combating the ice-cold threat of the others. Jon Snow's claim to the prophecy becomes stronger when his true parentage is revealed, making him a prince of Targaryen blood raised in the north with intimate knowledge of the threats beyond the wall. His resurrection after being murdered by his Night's Watch brothers could represent the promised rebirth, literally bringing him back from death amidst the salt of tears and smoke of funeral preparations. His Valyrian steel sword, Longclaw, might serve as his lightbringer, particularly if he is forced to use it against someone he loves to fulfill his destiny. The tragic element of the Azor Ahai legend suggests that fulfilling the prophecy requires a sacrifice that transforms victory into tragedy. If Jon represents Azor Ahai and Daenerys represents Nissa Nissa, then Jon might be forced to kill the woman he loves to prevent her from becoming a greater threat to the realm than the enemies they fought together to defeat. This interpretation transforms their romance from a hopeful union of ice and fire into a predetermined tragedy where love becomes the weapon that saves the world. Alternatively, the prophecy might be fulfilled through multiple people working together rather than a single chosen one. Daenerys could represent the hero who awakens dragons, Jon could embody the prince who unites the realm, and Tyrion might serve as the third head of the dragon who provides the wisdom necessary to wield such power responsibly. Their combined efforts, rather than individual heroism, could represent the true fulfillment of ancient prophecy. The deeper meaning of these prophecies might lie in their function as cautionary tales rather than roadmaps to salvation. Throughout the series, characters who become obsessed with prophecy, Rhaegar Targaryen, Stannis Baratheon, Melisandre, make increasingly destructive choices in pursuit of their prophetic destiny. The prophecies themselves might be tests of wisdom, distinguishing between those who seek power for its own sake and those who accept responsibility for the greater good, regardless of personal cost. Theory 11. The Maester Conspiracy, the war against magic. The citadel of Old Town, revered throughout Westeros as the center of learning and knowledge, may be the headquarters of the most successful conspiracy in the realm's history, a systematic campaign to eliminate magic, dragons, and prophecy from the world. The Maesters, with their vows of service and their chains of office, have positioned themselves as advisors to every major house while secretly working to create a world governed by reason and empirical knowledge, rather than the chaos and unpredictability of magical forces. Archmaester Marwyn's blunt accusation provides the foundation for this theory when he asks Samwell Tarly a devastating question. Who do you think killed all the dragons the last time around? Gallant dragonslayers armed with swords? His answer reveals the scope of the Maester's ambitions. The world the Citadel is building has no place in it for sorcery or prophecy or glass candles, much less for dragons. This isn't the rambling of an eccentric scholar. It's a whistleblower's confession about an institutional conspiracy that has shaped Westerosi history for centuries. The evidence for Maester involvement in the extinction of dragons lies in the peculiar circumstances surrounding their decline during the Targaryen Civil War known as the Dance of the Dragons. While the immediate cause was clearly the dragons destroying each other in battle, the longer-term pattern suggests systematic intervention. Dragon eggs stopped hatching reliably, newborn dragons sickened and died, and the knowledge of dragon husbandry seemed to fade from even the Targaryens themselves. These developments align perfectly with what would be expected from a subtle but persistent campaign of sabotage. Maesters occupied a unique position to carry out such sabotage effectively. They served as advisors to the Targaryens, giving them access to dragon eggs, hatchlings, and the facilities where dragons were kept. Their medical knowledge would allow them to administer poisons that might not kill adult dragons immediately, but could interfere with reproduction, weaken immune systems, or cause developmental problems in young dragons. Their scholarly reputation would make their advice on dragon care seem authoritative and well-intentioned, even as it led to the creature's gradual extinction. The conspiracy extends beyond dragons to encompass all forms of magic that threaten the Meister's vision of an ordered, rational world. Their systematic discrediting of prophecy, their promotion of skepticism towards supernatural explanations, and their careful documentation of natural phenomena all serve to create a worldview where magic is dismissed as superstition and the Maester's empirical knowledge becomes the only reliable source of truth about the world. Lady Barbary Dustin's bitter characterization of Maesters as grey rats who whisper in lords' ears and make them do their bidding reflects a growing awareness among some nobles that the Maester's influence extends far beyond their official advisory role. Her specific complaint that Maesters read all the letters, write the replies, and know what passes in every stronghold highlights how their control of communication networks gives them unprecedented power to shape events throughout the realm. The Maester's methods are necessarily subtle and long-term, working through influence rather than direct action. They manipulate lords through carefully crafted counsel, promote policies that weaken magical traditions, and gradually shift cultural attitudes away from supernatural explanations toward rational ones. Their success in this campaign is evidenced by the general skepticism toward magic that prevails throughout most of Westeros, with supernatural events dismissed as tricks, madness, or superstition by educated people. The institutional nature of this conspiracy means that individual Maesters might not even be fully aware of their role in the larger campaign. The anti-magical bias is built into their training, their worldview, and their professional culture, making it seem like natural scholarly skepticism rather than deliberate manipulation. Only those at the highest levels of the Citadel, like the Archmaesters who control the institution's direction, would understand the full scope and purpose of their activities. Archmaester Marwyn represents the internal resistance to this conspiracy, a scholar who has retained belief in magic despite his Citadel training. His hurried departure from Old Town upon learning of Daenerys's dragons suggests he believes she faces immediate danger from his colleagues, or that he views her dragons as crucial to countering the Citadel's anti-magical agenda. His existence proves that the conspiracy is not absolutely total, but also highlights how thoroughly marginalized pro-magical voices have become within the institution. The return of dragons and the re-emergence of magic throughout the series represents an existential threat to everything the Maesters have worked to achieve over the centuries. Their conspiracy, so successful for so long, now faces challenges that their rational worldview cannot adequately address or counter. The glass candles burning in the Citadel signal that the age of magic has returned, whether the Maesters approve or not, and their carefully constructed rational world may be about to collapse under the weight of forces they sought to eliminate, but never truly understood. Theory 12. The true purpose of the Faceless Men, an anti-magical crusade. The Faceless Men of Braavos are far more than the world's most skilled assassins. They are the instruments of an ancient crusade against magic itself. Born from the suffering of slaves in the volcanic mines of old Valyria, these servants of the many-faced god have spent centuries working to eliminate the very forces that once enslaved and tormented their founders. Their ultimate goal isn't merely to serve death, but to ensure that no magical power ever again achieves the kind of dominance that the Valyrian dragon lords once wielded over human lives. The origins of the Faceless Men reveal the depth of their mission. In the hellish slave mines beneath Valyria's 14 flames, Countless souls suffered and died to feed the sorcerer's hunger for precious metals and magical components. The first faceless man heard the prayers of these tortured souls, prayers offered to countless gods from every corner of the known world, and realized that all these deities were simply different faces of the same fundamental force. Death, the great equalizer that comes for slave and master alike. When this first servant of death began offering the gift to the most suffering among the slaves, he wasn't just ending their pain, he was making a statement about the ultimate equality of all mortals in the face of death. More significantly, when he extended this gift to the Valyrian masters themselves, he was declaring war on the entire system that allowed some humans to wield such devastating power over others through magical means. The Faceless Men's involvement in the doom of Valyria represents the culmination of this ancient mission. Rather than being a natural disaster or simple magical accident, the doom may have been the result of a carefully orchestrated campaign of assassination targeting the key sorcerer priests who maintained the magical constraints on the 14 Flames. By eliminating these crucial figures at precisely the right moment, the Faceless Men could have triggered a chain reaction that destroyed the entire Valyrian civilization in a single, catastrophic day. This interpretation explains why the kindly man tells Arya that the Faceless Men brought the gift to the slave masters of Valyria. It wasn't just individual murders, but a systematic elimination of the magical hierarchy that kept the entire freehold functioning. The volcanic eruptions and earthquakes that followed weren't the cause of Valyria's destruction. They were the inevitable result of removing the magical controls that had kept such massive geological forces in check. The Faceless Men's continued. Interest in dragon-related artifacts and knowledge supports this anti-magical agenda. Their reported attempts to acquire dragon eggs from Euron Greyjoy and their possible infiltration of the Citadel in Old Town suggest ongoing efforts to understand and potentially neutralize draconic magic. They don't seek these artifacts to use them, but to ensure they cannot be used by others to recreate the kind of magical dominance that once characterized Valyria. Their philosophy of Valar Morghulis, all men must die, takes on deeper meaning. When viewed through this lens, it's not just an acknowledgement of mortality, but a radical declaration that no one, regardless of magical power or divine pretensions, can escape the fundamental equality imposed by death. In a world where magic can grant seemingly unlimited power, the Faceless Men serve as the ultimate enforcement mechanism, ensuring that even the most powerful sorcerers and dragons remain subject to the same mortality that governs ordinary humans. The ability of the Faceless Men to change faces makes them uniquely suited to combat magical threats. Green seers who can see the future, dragons who can sense deception, and sorcerers who can detect magical auras all become vulnerable when faced with assassins who can literally become no one. Their magical anonymity allows them to approach targets who might otherwise foresee or prevent their own deaths through supernatural means. Theory 13. There must always be a Stark in Winterfell. The ancient pact. The sacred saying, "There must always be a Stark in Winterfell," represents far more than family tradition or regional pride. It's the verbal remnant of an ancient magical pact that maintains the balance between the realms of men and others. This pact, forged in the aftermath of the First Long Night, requires the continuous presence of Stark blood in Winterfell to prevent the return of the ice and darkness that once nearly consumed the world. The phrase itself carries the weight of 8,000 years of unbroken tradition, suggesting that its importance transcends normal political or cultural practices. The fact that it's repeated not just by Starks, but by other Northerners, indicates a shared understanding that this isn't merely about family succession, but about something fundamental to the safety and stability of the North itself. Winterfell's unique magical properties support this theory. The castle sits atop natural hot springs that keep its walls warm even in the depths of winter, suggesting a connection to deep earth magic that predates human construction. The ancient crypts beneath the castle, with their stone kings bearing iron swords to keep the dead in their graves, hint at magical defenses that require active maintenance through stark presence and stark blood. The original pact may have been negotiated by the legendary Night's King himself before his fall into corruption and darkness. If he was indeed a Stark, as Old Nan suggests, his initial relationship with the others might have been diplomatic rather than hostile. The continuous presence of a Stark in Winterfell could have been established as a condition of peace, a living guarantee that humanity would honor whatever agreements were made to end the long night. Alternatively, the requirement might relate to the magical infrastructure that Bran the Builder established throughout the North. The Wall, Winterfell, and the various magical defenses that protect the realm from supernatural threats might all be connected through a network that requires Stark blood to function properly. Just as the Wall needs the Night's Watch to maintain its physical integrity, the broader magical defenses might need Stark presence to maintain their supernatural effectiveness. The timing of various catastrophes in Stark history supports this interpretation. When Starks have been absent from Winterfell for extended periods, or when the family has faced near extinction, the North has experienced unusual supernatural activity and increased threats from beyond the Wall. The correlation suggests that Stark absence weakens whatever magical protections keep the realm safe from ancient dangers. The deeper magic might involve the Weirwood network itself. The heart tree in Winterfell's Godswood could serve as a crucial node in the magical communication system that connects all Weirwoods throughout the North. A Stark presence, with their First Men blood and inherent connection to the old gods, might be necessary to keep this network functioning and to ensure that threats from the far north are detected and countered before they can gain momentum. Theory 14. The Weirwood Network, an ancient consciousness. The Weirwood trees scattered throughout Westeros form more than just a religious system. They constitute a vast living network of consciousness that preserves the accumulated memory and knowledge of thousands of years. This ancient intelligence, composed of the absorbed spirits of children of the forest and human green seers, subtly influences events throughout the realm while serving as a repository for all the forgotten histories and lost magic of the First Men. The children of the forest's assertion that we are the trees and the trees are we reveals the literal truth behind Weirwood magic. When children or human green seers die, their consciousness doesn't simply fade away. It merges with the Weirwood network, adding their memories, knowledge, and personality to the collective intelligence that spans the continent. This process creates an ever-growing database of experience that transcends individual mortality. The carved faces on Weirwood trees serve as more than symbolic representations. They're actual interfaces through which the network can observe and occasionally influence the physical world. The red sap that flows from their eyes isn't just tree resin, but a manifestation of the consciousness within, weeping for the tragedies it has witnessed and continues to witness through its countless centuries of observation. Green seers like Bran Stark and Brynden Rivers serve as living interfaces between this ancient network and the contemporary world. Their ability to see through the eyes of any Weirwood across both space and time derives from their connection to a consciousness that exists outside normal temporal limitations. The network's vast perspective allows it to perceive patterns and connections that individual humans could never comprehend. The network's influence on events operates through subtle means, prophetic dreams sent to sensitive individuals, whispered, guidance through rustling leaves, and the manipulation of probability through tiny interventions that accumulate into significant changes over time. The widespread belief that it's impossible to lie before a heart tree stems from the network's accumulated wisdom about human nature and its ability to perceive truth through means that transcend normal sensory perception. The ancient magic embedded in this system represents a fundamentally different approach to power than the fire magic of Valyria or the shadow magic of Ashai. Where those systems rely on dominance and control, the Weirwood network operates through patience, memory, and gradual influence. It doesn't seek to rule the world, but to preserve it, maintaining the knowledge necessary for humanity to survive the cyclical threats that have plagued Westeros since the dawn of history. Theory 15. The Lost History of House Dane and the Secrets of Starfall. House Dane of Starfall possesses secrets that predate not only the Targaryens, but possibly even the First Men themselves. Their ancestral sword Dawn, forged from the heart of a fallen star, and their distinctive Valyrian-like features that existed millennia before Valyria's rise, suggest that the Danes are the last remnants of an ancient civilization that once wielded powers beyond current understanding. The Castle of Starfall derives its name from the celestial event that provided the metal for Dawn, a star that fell to Earth in the distant past and was somehow transformed into a blade of unparalleled quality. This star metal differs fundamentally from Valyrian steel, possessing its own unique properties that make it alive with light and capable of extraordinary sharpness without the dark magic that characterizes other supernatural weapons. Chachan Dane's physical characteristics, silver hair and violet eyes identical to those of Valyrian dragonlords, represent one of the series' greatest mysteries. These traits appeared in Westeros thousands of years before the rise of Valyria, suggesting either that the Danes represent a branch of whatever ancient people gave rise to the Valyrians, or that they independently developed similar features through exposure to different but related magical influences. The title Sword of the Morning carries deeper significance than mere chivalric honor. The association with dawn and light suggests a connection to the ancient battle against darkness that predates the current threats facing Westeros. The Danes may be the hereditary guardians of knowledge or power, specifically designed to combat the forces of night and winter, with dawn serving as both symbol and weapon in this eternal struggle. Arthur Dayne's presence at the Tower of Joy during Jon Snow's birth connects the house to the broader prophetic narrative surrounding Azor Ahai and the prince that was promised. If dawn was present during the birth of a potential savior, it might fulfill the prophecy's requirement for a bleeding star, while also suggesting that the Danes play a crucial role in recognizing and protecting prophesied heroes. The mysterious fate of Ashara Dayne adds another layer to the house's secrets. Her supposed suicide after losing her child and her love might be a deliberate fiction designed to hide her true fate and the true parentage of her child. If she bore a child to Eddard Stark, Rhaegar Targaryen, or another significant figure, that offspring might carry both Dayne blood and the blood of another great house, creating a combination of lineages with unprecedented magical potential. Theory 16. The true nature and purpose of the Others. The Others represent far more than mindless harbingers of destruction. They are an ancient species with their own complex motivations, possibly driven by the violation of forgotten pacts, the need to restore magical balance, or their role as a natural force of renewal that human civilization has disrupted through its expansion and the abuse of fire magic. The Others' obvious Intelligence and organization suggests they operate according to principles and goals that humans simply don't understand, rather than acting from pure malevolence. Their creation of whites, their distinctive ice crystal armor and weapons, and their apparent hierarchy all point to a sophisticated culture with its own traditions, laws, and objectives that have nothing to do with the simple desire to destroy life. The ancient pact theory proposes that the other's current advance represents an attempt to enforce agreements made with humanity during the first long night. These accords might have established boundaries, tribute systems, or mutual obligations that the realm has forgotten or deliberately violated. The gradual decline of the Night's Watch, the abandonment of many castles along the wall, and the increasing skepticism toward old warnings might all constitute violations of ancient terms that the others are now seeking to rectify. The balance. Theory suggests that the others serve as a natural counterweight to the fire magic that has been growing stronger throughout the series. The return of dragons, the influence of Rahala's priests, and the increasing use of fire-based magic might be disrupting a fundamental equilibrium that the others are compelled to restore. In this interpretation, they represent not evil but necessity, the ice that must rise to counter the unchecked growth of fire. The cyclical renewal theory posits that the other's periodic returns serve an essential function in the natural order, clearing away the accumulated corruption and stagnation that builds up in human civilization over long periods. Their association with winter and death doesn't make them evil any more than winter itself is evil. They're part of a natural cycle that human societies resist because they can't perceive the larger patterns that govern their world. The violation of natural order theory focuses on humanity's increasing separation from the magical forces that once governed their relationship with the land. The cutting down of weirwoods, the abandonment of old gods worship, and the general turn toward material concerns over spiritual ones might have disrupted ancient harmonies that the others are attempting to restore through force. Theory 17. The Doom of Valyria, a convergence of catastrophes. The cataclysmic destruction of the Valyrian freehold wasn't the result of a single random disaster, but rather the culmination of a perfect storm involving geological instability, magical overreach, and what may have been the most successful assassination campaign in human history. The Doom represents the convergence of natural forces, Valyrian hubris, and the calculated revenge of those who had suffered most under the Dragon Lord's tyrannical rule. Valyria was built upon a foundation of barely controlled volcanic fury. The Satyr 14 flames that gave the freehold its power were never truly dormant. They were an active supervolcano system that the Valyrians had learned to suppress and harness through incredibly complex magical rituals. These sorcerous constraints required constant maintenance by the most skilled fire mages, who used dragon-enhanced spells to keep the massive geological forces in check while mining the volcanic depths for the precious metals and magical components that fueled their civilization. The magical infrastructure that controlled the 14 flames represented both Valyria's greatest achievement and its most critical vulnerability. The spells that kept the volcanoes from erupting simultaneously required precise coordination among dozens of sorcerer priests, each maintaining their portion of a vast magical network that spanned the entire peninsula. This system worked flawlessly for centuries, but its very complexity made it susceptible to catastrophic failure if key components were removed or disrupted. The faceless men, born from the suffering of slaves in Valyria's deepest mines, possessed both the motivation and the capability to trigger such a failure. Having originated among the most oppressed victims of Valyrian power, they understood better than anyone how the system of magical control functioned and where its weakest points lay. Their philosophy of death as the great equalizer made them natural enemies of a civilization built on the principle that some humans could wield godlike power over others through magic and dragons. The systematic assassination of key sorcerer priests at precisely the right moment could have created a cascading failure that overwhelmed the remaining magical controls. As each mage died, their portion of the containment network would have collapsed, placing additional strain on the surviving members until the entire system reached a critical breaking point. The Faceless Men's ability to change faces and infiltrate any social circle would have made such a coordinated campaign not just possible, but almost inevitable given their goals and capabilities. King Viserys. Targaryen's cryptic comment to Princess Rhaenyra that the pride of dragons and their dominion over magic played a role in Valyria's destruction suggests that the Dragon Lord's own arrogance contributed to their downfall. Perhaps they became so confident in their magical mastery that they ignored warning signs, dismissed the possibility of coordinated resistance, or simply pushed their power too far beyond safe limits in pursuit of ever greater dominance. Daenerys. The dreamer's prophetic vision of the doom 12 years before it occurred indicates that the catastrophe was building long before it finally erupted. Her foresight prompted the Targaryen exodus to Dragonstone, but it also suggests that the forces leading to Valyria's destruction were already in motion and perhaps unstoppable by that point. The convergence of geological instability, magical overextension, and targeted assassination had created a situation where disaster was inevitable. The aftermath of the Doom, the creation of the Smoking Sea, the continued volcanic activity centuries later, and the twisted creatures that inhabit the ruined peninsula demonstrates the magnitude of the forces that were unleashed. This wasn't just a volcanic eruption, but a fundamental breakdown of the magical laws that had governed the region for millennia, creating a permanently scarred landscape where normal rules of nature no longer apply. Theory 18. The Secrets of Dragonstone. Rhys, more than just a fortress, Dragonstone represents far more than the ancestral seat of House Targaryen. It's a masterwork of Valyrian magical engineering designed to serve as a nexus for dragon-related sorcery, a magical amplifier for fire magic, and possibly a fail-safe mechanism for preserving Valyrian civilization in the event of catastrophic loss. The castle's unique dragon-shaped architecture and volcanic location weren't chosen for aesthetic or defensive reasons alone, but because they serve crucial magical functions that most observers fail to recognize. The construction of Dragonstone itself reveals the depth of Valyrian magical knowledge. The castle wasn't built in the conventional sense, but was shaped from the living rock of the island using advanced sorcery that fused dragon magic with geological forces. Every dragon-shaped tower, every carved gargoyle, and every architectural detail serves both symbolic and functional purposes in a grand magical working that transforms the entire structure into a three-dimensional spell of incredible complexity and power. The castle's location on an active volcanic island provides it with direct access to the same geological forces that powered Valyrian civilization. The Dragonmont, the volcano that dominates the island, serves as a natural focus for fire magic, channeling raw magical energy up from the Earth's depths and making it available for various sorcerous purposes. The combination of volcanic activity and dragon magic creates a unique magical environment that exists nowhere else in Westeros. The timing of the Targaryen exile to Dragonstone, 12 years before the Doom, suggests that the island was always intended to serve as more than just an outpost. Aenar Targaryen's decision to relocate his entire family, their dragons, and their most precious possessions to this remote fortress indicates that Dragonstone was specifically prepared to function as a preservation site for Valyrian culture and magical knowledge. In the event of catastrophe, the dragon-shaped architecture serves magical as well as aesthetic purposes. In a world where symbolism carries tangible magical weight, shaping an entire castle to resemble dragons would create sympathetic magical connections that enhance draconic magic within its walls. The building itself becomes a massive magical focus that amplifies the natural abilities of dragons and their riders, while providing a sympathetic environment for dragon eggs to hatch and young dragons to thrive. The presence of functioning glass candles in Dragonstone's chambers provides further evidence of the castle's ongoing magical properties. These Valyrian artifacts, which burn without consuming fuel and allow communication across vast distances, require specific magical conditions to function properly. Their continued operation suggests that Dragonstone maintains magical energies that have been lost elsewhere, making it a unique repository of active Valyrian sorcery. Melisandre's ability to perform powerful magic while residing at Dragonstone, including the creation of shadow assassins and the apparent transformation of Stannis' sword into a flaming weapon, demonstrates the castle's capacity to amplify and focus magical energies. Her rituals, which require significant power to accomplish, become achievable through her access to the magical infrastructure that the Valyrians embedded in the castle's very foundations. The strategic importance of Dragonstone extends beyond its military value as a fortress controlling access to Blackwater Bay. Its function as a magical nexus makes it crucial for anyone seeking to restore Targaryen power or revive the lost arts of dragon mastery. Control of the island provides access to knowledge, magical resources, and sympathetic environments that cannot be replicated elsewhere in Westeros. The castle's role in dragon hatching and raising suggests that it was specifically designed to serve as a nursery for the creatures that were the foundation of Valyrian power. The magical conditions created by the combination of volcanic forces, dragon-shaped architecture, and embedded sorcery create an environment where dragon eggs are more likely to hatch successfully and where young dragons can develop properly. This makes Dragonstone not just a military stronghold, but a crucial component in any attempt to restore dragons to the world. The deeper purpose of Dragonstone may have been to serve as a seed bank for Valyrian civilization, a place where their most important knowledge, magical techniques, and biological resources could be preserved against the possibility of catastrophic loss. The Targaryens, who escaped to Dragonstone before the Doom, carried with them not just their personal wealth and dragons, but the keys to potentially rebuilding their entire civilization should the need arise. The ongoing volcanic activity of the Dragonmont provides a continuous source of the geological forces that powered Valyrian magic, making Dragonstone a renewable resource rather than a finite one. Unlike other Valyrian ruins that have lost their magical potency over time, Dragonstone remains active and vital, continuing to serve its original functions centuries after the civilization that created it has vanished from the world. The castle's unique properties explain why it has remained important throughout Targaryen history, serving not just as a ceremonial seat for the heir apparent, but as a crucial magical resource that enhances the family's draconic abilities. The Prince of Dragonstone title carries real significance beyond mere political rank, representing access to magical knowledge and power that cannot be obtained elsewhere. The return of dragons to the world, beginning with Daenerys' miraculous hatching in the Dothraki Sea, may have reactivated dormant magical systems within Dragonstone that had been waiting for the return of draconic magic to the world. The castle that preserved Valyrian civilization through its darkest hour may now be poised to play a crucial role in its restoration, serving once again as the nexus from which dragon magic spreads throughout the known world. The relationship between Dragonstone and the broader magical ecosystem of Westeros remains largely unexplored, but the castle's continued importance suggests that it serves functions that extend far beyond the purely local. Its role as a bridge between the lost magic of Valyria and the ancient magic of Westeros positions it as a crucial element in understanding how different magical traditions might be combined or reconciled in the conflicts to come. The ultimate significance of Dragonstone lies not in its past glory, but in its potential future role as the foundation for a new magical order that combines the best elements of Valyrian dragon magic with the wisdom and restraint that might prevent the hubris and catastrophic failures that led to the original doom. The castle stands as both a monument to Valyrian achievement and a warning about the dangers of unchecked magical power, serving as the perfect base for those who would seek to wield such forces more responsibly than their predecessors. And so, we reach the end of our journey through the hidden depths of Westeros, having explored 18 theories that reveal the intricate web of secrets, prophecies, and forgotten histories that George R.R. Martin has woven throughout his masterpiece. Each revelation we've uncovered tonight adds another layer to the rich tapestry of A Song of Ice and Fire, transforming familiar characters and events into something far more complex and meaningful than they first appeared. From Jon Snow's true parentage that makes him the living embodiment of ice and fire, to Tyrion's hidden dragon blood that recontextualizes his entire relationship with his supposed father, we've seen how the most explosive secrets often hide in plain sight. The Hound's quiet redemption on the Quiet Isle reminds us that even the most damaged souls can find peace, while Lyanna Stark's identity as the Knight of the Laughing Tree shows us how a single act of defiance can set in motion events that reshape entire kingdoms. The political conspiracies we've explored, from the Grand Northern Conspiracy's patient planning for revenge to Doran Martell's decades-long game of calculated vengeance, demonstrate that in Westeros, the most dangerous enemies are often those who appear weakest. The Southron ambitions that preceded Robert's rebellion reveal that even the most spontaneous-seeming conflicts often have roots that run deeper than anyone realizes. The ancient mysteries we've uncovered speak to forces and powers that transcend individual ambitions and mortal lifespans. The Night's King's dark legacy, the true nature of the others, and the ancient pacts that may still bind the realm all remind us that the current conflicts are just the latest chapter in a story that began thousands of years ago and may continue long after the current players have left the stage. The magical conspiracies, the Meister's war against magic, the Faceless Men's crusade against tyrannical power, the Weirwood Network's patient preservation of memory, show us a world where knowledge itself becomes a weapon, and where the battle between different ways of understanding reality shapes the fate of nations. These hidden conflicts often matter more than the obvious wars between kings and queens. The prophetic elements we've examined, from Azor Ahai's sacrificial destiny to Bran's potential role in creating the very threats he seeks to prevent, illustrate how attempts to control or predict the future often become the very mechanisms that ensure its arrival. In Westeros, prophecy is never straightforward, and those who seek to fulfill destiny often find themselves trapped by it instead. The forgotten catastrophes and lost civilizations we've explored, Valyria's doom, the secrets of Dragonstone, the mysteries of House Dane, remind us that the current age is built upon the ruins of earlier greatness, and that the mistakes of the past continue to echo through the present in ways that few understand. The magical infrastructure that once supported entire civilizations still shapes the world, even when its original purpose has been forgotten. Perhaps most importantly, these theories reveal that in George R.R. Martin's world, nothing is ever quite what it seems. The bastard is a prince, the imp carries royal blood, the monster seeks redemption, and the weak prove to be the most dangerous of all. Heroes are flawed, villains have understandable motivations, and the greatest victories often come at costs that make triumph indistinguishable from tragedy. The beauty of these theories lies not in whether they prove correct, but in how they illuminate the incredible depth and complexity that Martin has built into his world. Every character carries hidden depths, every event connects to larger patterns, and every revelation opens new questions that deepen our understanding of what it means to play the Game of Thrones. As you drift off to sleep tonight, let your mind wander through the halls of Winterfell, across the narrow sea to the ruins of Valyria, and beyond the wall to the lands of always winter. Consider the possibility that everything you thought you knew about this world was just the surface of something far more intricate and profound. In the Game of Thrones, the most important moves are often those that remain hidden until the very end. The Song of Ice and Fire continues to play, its melodies interweaving through past, present, and future in ways that reveal new harmonies each time we listen. And perhaps, in the quiet hours before dawn, when the boundary between dreams and waking thought grows thin, you might just hear whispers of secrets still waiting to be discovered in the world that George R.R. Martin has given us. A world where winter is always coming, but spring might yet follow for those brave enough to face the darkness with truth as their only light. Sleep well, dreamers of Westeros. The realm of ice and fire will be waiting when you return.